57% of organizations admit that security controls slow down their release cycles. Nearly 60% of cloud breaches in 2025 will stem from misconfiguration or gaps introduced during the rapid development. This is just highlighting how urgent it is to secure modern applications without slowing down innovation. My name is Paul Nashawaty. I'm the practice lead and principal analyst for the application development practice, and I'm joined by Gil from Orca. Gil, how you doing?
Thank you for having me, Paul. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, thanks for being on. It's a really important topic. I mean, this is something that comes up very frequently. Why don't we introduce yourself and Orca Security and tell the audience a little bit about why we're here?
So I'm Gil. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Orca Security. For those of you who don't know Orca, Orca is a CNAPP vendor. What we've created is a way for you to protect your cloud, whether it's AWS, Azure, GCP, Ali Cloud, Oracle, or more, and to do it in a holistic way where you're thinking about the entire dev cycle, from application security and how you're building and deploying applications to the cloud, your pipeline, and how you're protecting your cloud at rest and in runtime.
Yeah, super important part of the development cycle. I mean, that's no question that when we're looking at cloud native development. So Gil, in this episode, we're focused on the toughest balancing act between modern software development and securing the cloud native applications, really without slowing down developers in their process. You know, as organizations are moving deeper into microservices and serverless architectures, visibility gaps have really widened between the dev and the security teams, really exposing new risks in fragmented environments. So like what we're finding also, Gil, in our research, that 70% of enterprises have accelerated cloud native adoption, yet fewer than half have a full observability across their entire pipelines. So the conversation here will help explore the teams that can shift security left without adding friction, and why agentless cloud security is changing, for developers and velocity, and what it means to really secure by default applications where they speed and security must finally really coexist in the environment. And that's really what we're looking at, Gil. So I think I really want to start here, as Gil, when we look at microservices and serverless architectures, it's really meant to be speeding up delivery, yet security teams in those architectures have really created some new blind spots really in this environment. But from your experience, what exactly do you see from a visibility and gaps that show up between dev and security teams in these microservices and serverless environments, and what low friction steps do you are in place to help close those gaps?
What we're seeing is that the need for velocity becomes essential for our business to operate. The need to be able to deploy fast, the need to be able to scale fast becomes fundamental in the way that you're providing service to your customers. And security teams are adapting and actually have to become more embedded in the process. And that's why we are seeing that there's tighter collaboration and participation between security teams, engineers, and DevOps. Why we had to overcome even a language gap between what we are trying to do, what we are trying to protect, and how we should do it. Because, for example, when you try to protect data at rest, then it doesn't matter whether it's SQLDB or RDS or even Neptune. What you care about is the fact that you want to protect the database and you want to make sure there's no external exposure. And when you talk about network and access, you actually mean exposure. And so how does that transition in a world where developers expect to work with identity and access management versus traditional networking and firewalls?
Yeah, I agree. And I also think that when we look at, some of our research here, we kind of tie that into the microservices and serverless, focus here that increases the decentralization and telemetry fragmentation, right? That's a big part of this. But creating those blind spots and really does require a new way of looking at it, new tooling, new processes, and a way to reconnect dev and security together. So I think that's like you were touching on that when we went through it. But I want to kind of look at this in the context of shifting left or shift left is really it's a cry for organizations to move towards, developers are taking on a lot of extra work. They're taking on a lot of extra kind of processes, but they're also not. A lot of times, developers are not security experts, right? So they're trying to do the right thing for the company. They're putting practical developer friendly strategies in place. That's tooling, the pipeline automation, policy as code patterns. But like, what does this mean from letting security move earlier in the life cycle, really without becoming a drag on velocity?
I think it's a common misconception that shifting to the left will slow you down. It actually will speed you up. What I mean is that think about, for developers, what's the worst thing that can happen? A bug in the design, right? And then they have to go back and change a lot of things versus a bug in code that they can easily fix. So a bug in the design is way more expensive. Very similarly in security, if you have a security issue in production, it's extremely, extremely important. It's extremely critical. If it's creating a downtime, if it's creating a breach, then it's way more expensive than fixing it while you're building the code, while you're designing the code. And so essentially, your ability to influence, your ability to fix earlier in the pipeline, your ability to fix it before it's being deployed in production actually speeds you up. And for developers, none of the developers want their code to be breached. None of the developers want to have a security issue. The main challenge is to understand that it is important and why they should fix it and why it's relevant for them. And that's what a good solution in AppSec tries to tell you, hey, this is important, you should fix it. And if it will go to production, it will be critical. So let's do it now. And that will speed you up.
Yeah, actually, earlier in my career, I was told, you have to slow down to go faster, right? And that's kind of what we're looking at here. You're right. I don't think adding security earlier in the CI/CD pipeline really slows you down. It actually helps with that focus, right? And what we find in our research is AppDev focused analysis really emphasizes more on automation and real-time AppSec and embedding security into the CI/CD flow. It really is a way to shift left without while preserving the throughput, right? And then kind of getting it out. So I agree with your statements there about it doesn't slow you down. It actually makes things accelerate things faster. But let's shift a little bit in the conversation. We talked a little bit on a pre-brief and a briefing. We talked about Agentless and why Agentless cloud security is really being touted as a game changer for visibility, right? So I like that approach because like when we look at Agentless, there's less of an impact to the environment, there's less overhead. But how does Agentless, when we look at this, Gil, how does Agentless and API graph-based approaches reduce operational overhead, for those development teams? And what are the trade-offs that the team should be aware of when they're looking at these like different solutions, different approaches, right? A lot of times people will say there's 100 roads to the same destination. Why should they look at Agentless?
Yeah, it definitely changed the game in the sense that there's no longer chicken and the egg. Being in a position where you have to deploy something that will have performance impact or will cause obstruction to your production, in order to understand whether there might be a security issue, there might be an obstruction to your production, is definitely doesn't work in scaled environments. And what we've seen is that on average, on production environments, less than 50% of the environment is actually covered by traditional agents. And in those areas, what happens is that lack of visibility leads to lack of accuracy. It leads to the fact that you're focusing on the wrong things. And in order to really collaborate with the DevOps and the engineers in a good way, you have to be very accurate. You have to be precise. You have to be able to tell them, hey, this is important, and this is why it is important. This is why it is important for you. So what you're getting is not only the fact that you have CV 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You're getting a critical vulnerability in an environment that has internet access, so there's an attack surface, and there is ability to access PII in this environment through this lateral movement. And then suddenly it moves from talking about security to talking about basically the way to focus on the right things that matter, talking about context.
Yeah, I agree. I think you definitely need to streamline and focus in on what is going to be the most effective to drive your optimized environment. One of the things I do want to talk about with regards to Agentless is in our recent AppDev summit, the research I put out, we talked about this coverage of agentless and graph-based, cloud-based security platforms and how it highlighted the ability to inventory and analyze cloud estates without installing agents. And it really did help lower runtime maintenance and speed up adoption. So I think that there's a lot with reduction of those the maintenance mode and focus on innovation. But like again, a stat that we've been seeing for many years, and it still holds true today, is developers only spend a third of their time working on innovating, and they spend 2/3 of their time focused on maintenance. And this is where I think the agentless approach really helps with that as well. But when we also look at agentless, and we looked at this ability to understand what's going on, it's also about telemetry. So when you have fragmented telemetry, there's the ephemeral kind of functions, sidecar containers, and platform managed services. It's part of how organizations really need to prioritize which flows and components to instrument in their environment first, so security gains signal without really swamping teams with all sorts of different things. Let's talk a little bit, Gil, about the context around telemetry, understanding the different alerts that we see in the environment, and what does this mean from a security perspective to alert the team on all these different functions that are happening?
What we're seeing is that context is basically the king of decision making, right? Like trying to talk about an issue and to communicate someone about a risk without the context of the environment, the impact, the importance of the environment, the potential liability that we're taking is essential for decision making. And then what happens is that the traditional security approach, where we segmented security and we had compartments of, let's say, malware detection, data security, vulnerability management, it completely broke off when we moved to the cloud, because we have to talk about application, we have to talk about services, we have to talk about environments, and it leads to a position where companies and organizations also think about how to secure these environments in these formal factors, to define SLAs, to define the importance of these environments based on it. And so what we've seen is that to really understand whether, for example, a bucket should be internet facing, context matter. Maybe it should be internet facing. I need it for my website. I need the images. Yeah. I'm using it. If you will actually move it to be private, according to the security policy, you will take down our website.
Yeah. Well, I mean, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't interrupt you. Did you have anything else to add?
No, so I'm just saying that the value that at the end happens and the velocity that is gained is from the fact that good visibility of everything from the foundation level leads to the fact that security can be an enabler of technology instead of an inhibitor.
Yeah, I agree. Actually, in our research, we offer practitioner guidance that we recommend prioritizing the high-risk data paths and business-critical services that then iterate with the automated discovery to avoid the noisy, low-value telemetry collection. Right, that helps with, exactly to your point, focusing in on the right thing for the right time, but also having complete visibility to some of those other areas. So Gil, I want to look ahead a little bit, and I can't believe we're 15 minutes into this discussion and we just start talking about AI. But like when I want to ask the question around AI, it offers a greater open source dependency in a more cloud native patterns where organizations are looking at changes such as team structures, SLOs, SLIs, shared ownership models. These are things that people are looking at, organizations are looking at. And what will be the best balance between developer velocity and secure by default application delivery? Like, what do you think that's going to happen when we start incorporating AI into these mixes?
So first of all, I think like we get a medal for avoiding using the word AI for 15 minutes. So kudos to us. It was hard. But when we think about the future of AI in development, it's important to recognize that it's inevitable. Meaning the business drive is going to be stronger than any security restriction or concern, and the need for velocity in development is so essential and fundamental to businesses. So it's going to be here, and it must be here. And so it means that the security teams must adapt. And I would argue that AI is actually very good for a security team, and I'll explain why. When we think about a world where there's going to be AI native applications, where there's going to be vibe coding, when there's a world where we are expected to have higher velocity, we can also embed security better in the code. We can have the AI agents leverage the security policy and actually automate stuff like security code reviews. We can better train and enforce leverage of AI in development. And so I think it's going to bring us to a world where we are actually going to have better security than before.
Oh, I agree. And in our research, it points to the governance platforms and platform engineering and clearer collaboration models that really help with the key to sustaining velocity while addressing the supply chain and AI era risks, right? So these things are happening, but like we're doing everything that we can to mitigate any challenges or concerns up front. I agree with you that it's going to make it better because it's going to probably expose things faster. But it gives us, at this point, we still need that human in the loop kind of model. But Gil, we're coming to the end of our session here. I know we talked a lot about the different areas here. What are some of your closing thoughts? I want to give you the last word here on what you could leave the audience with and how they can learn more about what we're talking about.
I think that the key for success for companies and organizations to thrive in the cloud is to think about speed, think about velocity, and think about how we can better collaborate as teams between DevOps engineers and security teams. Giving accurate data, giving context in remediation in order to take the right decisions is a key factor in our success and in our future success as we think about how AppSec should evolve, how cloud security should evolve, and we think about how we are going to deploy applications that are AI native faster in the cloud. I encourage you guys to look at Orca and the research that we've been doing around how to use AI in security tools to increase velocity. And I'm sure that we're going to do a much better job as a community to ensure that we are moving faster and more securely.
Gil, thank you for your time. I'm really impressed with Orca. It's really everything you shared with me that in our pre-briefings and during the session today really been insightful and really provides a lot of insights on how the audience can kind of really look to things to drive forward. There's a lot going on here that the audience needs to consider. I want to thank the audience for tuning in. That was really an important kind of topic to think about, but we do appreciate you being part of the AppDevANGLE community. But for now, that wraps up this episode, but we'll be back next Wednesday with another conversation diving into the tools, trends, and talent shaping the future of application development. So whether you're developing or deploying at the edge, building an AI, or modernizing your cloud stack, we've got you covered. Be sure to follow us on social if you have any thoughts or questions or just want to connect. Until next time, stay curious and stay building. Thank you.